You know what's strange? The people who think the most aren't always confused. In fact, they're often the ones seeing things too clearly. What we call overthinking might not be a flaw at all, but a side effect of noticing what others miss. And once you see it, it's hard to go back. We're taught that overthinking is a problem, that if your mind keeps running, analyzing, questioning, something must be wrong. But what if that constant thinking isn't confusion? What if it's awareness? Because there's a difference between someone who is lost in their thoughts and someone who understands too much of what's really going on. Picture this. You're in a room full of people. Conversations are happening, laughter fills the space, everything seems normal. But your mind isn't just hearing words, it's picking up tone, pauses, body language. You notice the forced smile, the hesitation before someone answers, the shift in energy when a certain person walks in. While others are present, you're observing everything. And this is where things get strange. The more aware you become, the harder it is to stay mentally quiet. Your brain starts connecting patterns automatically. You begin to see intentions behind actions, emotions behind words, and sometimes contradictions in people's behavior. It's not that you want to overthink, it's that your mind doesn't know how to ignore what it sees. Psychologically, this is tied to heightened cognitive processing and emotional intelligence. Some individuals have a stronger tendency toward pattern recognition. Their brains are constantly analyzing information, predicting outcomes, and filling in gaps. Combine that with sensitivity to emotional cues, and you get a mind that doesn't just experience reality, it interprets it on multiple levels at once. But here's what most people don't realize. Awareness comes with a cost. When you see more, you also question more. Simple situations become layered. A casual conversation turns into a puzzle. A small change in someone's tone becomes something to decode. And while others move through life with simplicity, your mind stays active, trying to make sense of everything. Historically, this kind of thinking wasn't always seen as a problem. In many ways, it was valued. Philosophers, writers, and thinkers were often people who couldn't stop analyzing the world around them. They questioned norms, observed human behavior, and tried to understand deeper truths. But in today's fast-paced world, constant awareness can feel like a burden rather than a gift. Modern society rewards speed, distraction, and simplicity. Social media, short content, and endless stimulation train the brain to avoid depth. So when someone naturally thinks deeply, it feels out of place. They're told to relax, stop overthinking, or just go with the flow. But their mind doesn't work that way. It was never built to skim the surface. Research in psychology suggests that individuals with higher levels of introspection and awareness often experience more mental fatigue. Studies on rumination show that, while repetitive thinking can be linked to anxiety, it can also stem from a brain that is actively trying to process complex information. In other words, it's not always dysfunction. Sometimes it's depth. But here's the interesting part. Not all overthinking is the same. There's a difference between anxious spiraling and conscious awareness. Anxiety loops without resolution. Awareness seeks understanding. One traps you in fear. The other expands your perception. The problem is, from the outside, they look identical. And this is where people get misunderstood. Someone who is highly aware might appear distant, quiet, or lost in thought. But internally, they're not lost. They're processing. They're connecting dots that others don't even notice. They're trying to make sense of a world that often feels inconsistent and unpredictable. Over time, this can create a sense of isolation. When you see patterns in behavior, you start predicting outcomes. When you understand people too well, conversations can feel repetitive. And when your mind rarely slows down, it becomes difficult to fully relax. Not because you want to think so much, but because your awareness doesn't switch off. Here's what most people don't realize. The goal isn't to stop thinking. It's to learn when to step back from your own awareness. Because being aware of everything doesn't mean you need to engage with everything. Sometimes clarity comes not from analyzing more, but from choosing what actually deserves your attention. In the end, maybe you're not overthinking at all. Maybe you're just someone who sees more than most. And while that can feel overwhelming, it also means you understand the world in a way others don't. The challenge isn't your mind, it's learning how to live with its depth. If this made you see yourself a little differently, consider subscribing. There's a lot more about the mind we're only beginning to understand.